A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. And welcome to a rain-soaked Johannesburg. The jacket is in place because it's not quite as hard outside as it was a little while ago, but the rain has been pouring down across the city. It looks like I now live on a river, which should at least temporarily send the value of my property skyrocketing. Rain pouring down. It's a cool evening here in Johannesburg, which means some welcome wine. It could not be better timed. Welcome to the show. Welcome to two very special guests who offer a slightly different take on some wine tonight as we look at Pinot Noir out of Durbanville and we look at wine, including bubbles, out of Plettenberg Bay. What on earth is going on? We'll find out in just a second. Before we do that, though, I need you to do something for me. If you are in the Johannesburg area and you are at a loose end on Thursday, or even if you're not, just cancel what you're doing on Thursday, because we'd love to see you at Strauss at the first ever Dan Really Likes Wine Christmas auction. It is happening Thursday evening. It is 6:30 till 9:30. We've got a tremendous selection of auction items. Amongst them, a barrel of wine from Erica Obermeyer that she will make up and bottle to your preferences. We've got 50 different bottles of Cup Classique from the Cup Classique Association, celebrating half a century of Method Champenoise in South Africa. We've got wine from Ibn Sadi. We've got magnums from the Mullineaux. We've got big bottle formats from Meerlust, a 99 Rubicon, de Toren. We've got a magnum of Van de Constance. There's a 3-night stay for 6 people at Bartony with wine and dinner. There's a vertical selection of 7 Flags, the Pinot Noir from Paul Kluver. There's dinner plus wine at Ruston Freda. We've got a selection of magnums from Holden Mans. There's a Boschendal experience, and I think I've left out half of them. There's a big magnum from De Wetsoff. We've also got a magnum coming in from I think from Ruston Freda as well. So it's just a really great collection of wine. But most importantly, every cent raised goes to the Reach for a Dream Foundation. And it's an event I'm very excited about, a cause I'm very passionate about, and I'd love you to make a ticket. So 350 Rand each. That includes your food on the night, plus loads of wine. La Motte have some great wine for us, amongst others, plus the new Barista. And we've got plenty of Krona bubbles. So lots of reasons to come along, but principally supporting charity and supporting the Reach for a Dream Foundation. So if you are in the greater Johannesburg area, the tickets are available, web tickets. Please nip along, go and grab yourself a couple and come and join us on Thursday evening. If you're not able to, then the auction will be shown live on the Strauss platforms and you can join us and bid there instead. So that is Thursday. We'll also have the show live from Strauss on Thursday as we preview the incredible lots with Hugo Jacobs. He's also put up a Strauss lot, which will be on sale. There's a dinner with Michael Fridge on, a wine tasting dinner. There's a Great Domains Burgundy lot, and Strauss themselves have put up their best of the year, and the Cape Winemakers Guild, their protégés, have done a terrific selection as well. So loads of reasons to come along, sort out Christmas rather nicely, come and spend an evening with me and the Strauss team, and come and support the Reach for a Dream Foundation. Right, so that is Thursday. What about tonight? Well, I remember, it must have been earlier this year. I think I was down doing the official opening of Plaisir, hosting that for Michael and Rose. And after a great night out, had to haul myself out of bed at some ungodly hour and drive from Stellenbosch through to Durbanville to go and meet a gentleman who insisted that at 7:30 in the morning, my breakfast consists of a couple of different vintages of Sauvignon Blanc. He's become a good friend of mine since, and in fact, his daughter was on my other show, the Dan Nichols Show, recently. He is one of my guests. The other is a woman who, together with her husband, thought it would be a great idea to say goodbye to Durban and go and set up a wine farm in, of all places, Plettenberg Bay. Two wonderful stories, two wonderful guests. Charles Hopkins, Sue Lund, a very warm welcome, and thank you for joining Dan Really Likes Wine.
Yeah, Dan, thanks a lot. It's an absolute privilege to be on your show. I'm very thrilled. I must say, naming all that wines that will be on the Strauss auction, and it goes for such a great purpose. I'm jealous not to be there, and it's amazing wines that you mentioned. And yeah, Dan, I have 34 years of experience. I can't talk on behalf of any other business, but if there's one industry in the world or industry in South Africa, let's start with South Africa, that have amazing camaraderie, it's the wine industry. You can ask any younger winemaker, you can ask any older winemaker for a bit of advice. And there's a total of 962 winemakers in South Africa and 529 wineries. There's not a one that will not help you. I can assure you that. There's amazing camaraderie and a great vibe and a great ambiance between winemakers. We all compete for the same market, but we are all friends and do get on quite well. You mentioned the CWG. I'm privileged to be part of that. The Grendel have hosted the most proteges of all wineries that's member of the guild. I think 14 young proteges went through my hands, and on the 1st of December on Wednesday, I think Wednesday, my current protege is in Austria. She's doing a harvest there, and on the 1st of December, a new one will join us, and I can't wait to get hold of, start sharing my knowledge with her. And it's so amazing to see a young winemaker arrive here as a rookie and leave here after a year as a young, confident winemaker. It's really amazing.
I think you sum up the South African wine industry so well, Charles, in that every winemaker I meet is friendly, engaging, happy to do stuff. And although you are competing, as you do say, for similar markets, not always the same, but similar markets, there's never any sense of, well, I'm sticking to myself and you go and look after yourself. And that link is remarkable. And you can appreciate it so much more because of your 34 years. Take us back to the very beginning of those 34 years and give us the backstory, how Charles Hopkins found his way into wine and how the journey has taken you to where you are today.
Yeah, talking of rookies, I remember finishing my studies at Elsenburg. I was brought up in Bredasdorp in the Southern Cape, and I just had one goal, is to farm, to be a cattle farmer. And then I went to study it after my 2 years of compulsory military service. I went to study at Elsenburg, and believe me or not, there the wine bug got hold of me. I played a bit of rugby at Stellenbosch, the university, and met Jan Boland Coetzee. He had a big influence on my career, but I think the biggest is the late Billy Hofmeyer from Belgium and in Klapmuts. He was the first man that made a Bordeaux blend. And what a man. He was, if I remember correctly, he was a quantity surveyor, if I remember, and he just had this amazing passion. And I drove through from Elsenburg, just 10 kilometers up the road to Klapmuts, and spent Saturday morning sitting and listening to him. And I think he was the big inspiration. The wine industry was very different. As you know, it was the old days. Apartheid was very strong. There was very little, if any, export. So we were all focused on the local market, and wines was filled sadly in foil bags and in jugs and in canna jugs, probably 3, 5, 6 liters. And then this amazing thing took place in 1994. And then slowly but surely the wine market started opening up. And today at the Grendel, it's a complete different story. We produce 55,000 cases, and we sell a third of that on the local market, a third we export, and a third we have local distribution. So our sale is from premises, a third of each from premises, local distribution, and export. And it's such a vibrant industry to be in. We are 7 kilometers away from the ocean. We are on altitude between 180 and 290 meters above sea level. But yeah, it's amazing to look at the stats in the industry. There's, like I mentioned, 529 wineries, 50 is co-ops, and they produce more than 60% still of the wine in South Africa. And if I remember correctly, 23 is wholesalers, and the rest is all classified as private wineries like ourselves. So yeah, that's more or less a breakdown. And it's amazing. If I can tell you, winemaking is not a destination, my friend. It's a journey. It's an ongoing journey. Even after 34 years, I'm learning a lot. I'm learning each vintage, and I'm not learning necessarily from old, more experienced winemakers. I'm learning from youngsters, guys that travel to Burgundy and to California. I did some bit of traveling myself. I work a vintage in France, and I work a vintage in California. Yeah, and it's amazing. Today it's a modern, vibrant industry to be in.
And it's one that you have given so much back to, and your journey, your 34 years are full of, whether it's the protégés or just happy people who love a glass of de Grendel. And it's a great legacy, one that's certainly by no means finished. It's a reasonably conventional story in terms of going into farming, going into wine, making your way through. Very different to the story from our other guest who was in KwaZulu-Natal. I think there might have been some sugarcane farming. I need to check that. But decided, together with her husband, that it would be far more sensible to give up that and head off to Plettenberg Bay, that great wine capital of the world, and make some wine there. Indeed, Sue Lund, very warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine.
Thanks for having us, Dan. We're delighted to be here.
It's a terrific story, and it's terrific to have you on the show to share that story. I think I've sort of got it right. You and your husband, young family, decided, right, we're going to leave KwaZulu-Natal, we're going to go and make wine in Plettenberg Bay. Not a decision many people had made before. What was the motivation in terms of just deciding that wine was the way forward? And then why Plettenberg Bay of all places?
We'd been traveling to Plettenberg Bay for many years for polo, and it seemed just like a logical thing to do. We had bought a beautiful piece of land, and we'd been in New Zealand, and we were inspired by our trip there and obviously the cooler climate to put in a vineyard, a very small one. It's about 8 hectares. And we didn't ever give up sugar farming. We still do that. And we thought it would be a hobby, but it's actually turned out to be more of a sort of a life passion and a lifestyle. And although we planned to be there for 3 years, we never left.
And the wine that you produce is testament to your reason for not leaving. We can drink the wine now, as we will a little later in the show, and see why it has all come off. But what was it that made you think that Plettenberg Bay was going to be a good place to make wine?
Well, sugar farming is known as one of the easier crops to grow. And I think Pinot Noir just gave my husband, Doug, who is actually, we call him the relentless farmer. And that was enough of a challenge to sort of pique his interest.
What was the reaction like from family, from friends, from the winemaking community when you decided to set up this operation?
We actually hadn't heard anything from the winemaking community, but our friends and family were rather horrified, to the point where we both got second jobs to try and make sure that it was a viable option. But we were excited from the very first way that, from the very first van that went in. And we were very clear about what we wanted out of the vineyard. It was always about quality. And we had decided that if we were not happy, that we would never bottle a vintage. So we were very clear about what we wanted from the get-go. And we kind of made life and made wine and a life that we love. And the reaction from the wine industry came actually when we were invited to our first Michelangelo competition, and we won double gold at the very first our very first vintage of sparkling wine. And that was, a surprise. And we didn't really know that much about wine industry, but we are very particular about farming. Anton Smeld is our winemaker. So he takes the lead there, and we're in good hands with him. He was with Valeria for 18 years.
Charles, you'll know Anton particularly well, so seeing him produce great wine will not come as a surprise. But what was your response when you first heard on the grapevine, my apologies, that there was this daft couple who thought making wine in Plet was going to be this grand idea?
No, Dan, Sue, hello, nice meeting you, Charles.
Hi, lovely to meet you. An honor for us.
I would love to come and visit you one day and
we'd be delighted to have you.
Yeah, no, Dan, it's, you need people like that, that's really pioneers that conquer new areas and plant. And, I'm very cautious to use the word global warming because it's such an old sort of refrain. But I can assure you that there's definitely merit in planting vineyards in sort of new areas. And I think this evening I will touch on that when we start talking about the wines, because our wine is from Ceres, and maybe not such a big pioneer like Sue and her family, but there it's there it's competing with apples and pears, and the margins they make on a hectare of apples versus wine grapes is actually, you can only laugh about that. It's amazing. But no, I take my hat off, and I know Anton quite well. Like Sue mentioned, he's a very experienced guy, and it seems to me he is Mr. Wine in Plettenberg Bay. And I remember he's a great guy. He's a surfing kind of a guy. I'm not sure if he's still surfing, but wonderful, wonderful guy. Yeah.
I think if you look at Anton's profile picture on WhatsApp, that is him on a surfboard. So many of these winemakers do love their surfing. The process, Sue, of setting up this operation in what is fairly groundbreaking territory for winemaking in South Africa. You had your farming background, but in sugarcane. What was it like, those first steps, and what sort of support did you have to be able to set up the kind of space that allowed you to do things like win a Michelangelo with your first vintage?
I think we did things quite simply, but really well. So we, first of all, we obviously built, we were using the Brahman cellar at the time, and we built a tasting room. And only when somebody came riding on her bicycle and asked for something to eat did we think of a lunch, when people started to book without a restaurant actually being there. And then we added, things as people needed them, really. And then the last thing we added a few years ago was our cellar. So that was the biggest, I think, the best thing that we did. Yeah.
It's been a very quick journey. So fire away, jump in there, Charles.
No, sorry, Dan, I'm rude. So just to not to put you on the spot, but I'm a bit embarrassed to say I've tasted a few wines from Anton and different brands, but do you have an idea how many hectares is in Plet and how many brands and wineries is there established?
There were about, I think there were 18 sort of, yeah, but they're all boutique wineries. So much more like the size in Champagne. I know we do 8 hectares. So the difference in Platenburg Bay to other wine areas is that normally they're owner run and owner managed. And the owners actually live on the farms. And I'd say probably sort of 40 hectares at the most.
Okay. All right.
What about, Sue, the choice of what you've decided to make? We're going to be drinking some bubbles. You've got some Sauvignon Blanc. You've got some Rosé. Where did you meet in the middle in terms of what you decided, I really like drinking this, so I hope we can make it, and this is the terroir. This is actually what the area lends itself to making. Where was that middle ground?
It was the sparkling wine that we love to drink. And actually, with Doug playing sort of polo internationally, we did have a taste for French drier sparkling wines that we also found that the rosés in South Africa at the time were a little bit sweet for our palates. So we wanted to make something that we love to drink. And we also were governed by the cooler climate vintages that would suit Plettenberg Bay. And that meant that Pinot Noir, Sauvignon Blanc, and Chardonnay would do well there. We've also been told that a Malbec would be very good in Plettenberg Bay, but we decided to rather focus on those 3 varietals.
I was at a tasting this morning with Francois and the team at Lloyd out of Franschhoek, and he was talking through one of his particular wines. He's got about 11 different Capital Seats, but talking through one of them in particular, where a number of the grapes came from Plettenberg Bay. So there are clearly a lot of people who are in Plettenberg Bay quite seriously. Just in your relatively short time, do you get the sense that Plettenberg Bay as a wine of origin area is starting to crop up on a broader radar?
Absolutely. I mean, this week I got a call from the Financial Times travel section asking me about Plettenberg Bay and doing an interview on Plettenberg Bay as a wine region. So if that doesn't speak for itself, then I'm not sure what would, So yes, absolutely.
Charles, that leads us rather nicely into talking about your particular area, but then a different area, because you're making the wine we're going to try today, but you're bringing in the grapes from elsewhere, Pinot Noir and Durbanville. We don't normally speak about them in the same space. You've brought your grapes in. Tell us a little bit about the history behind this de Grendel Pinot Noir.
Yeah, Dan, if you allow me just a second, I promise you I'll do it very rapid. the history of Pinot Noir is actually amazing. As you know, Pinotage was cross-pollinated between Pinot Noir and Sin, so the local growers call it Hermitage, and that's where the Pinotage name comes from, P-I-N-O-T, and the last three letters of Hermitage. So then the variety is very susceptible to diseases. Specifically, it's quite a finicky variety, Pinot Noir. I think Sue will agree with me. And but it's very susceptible to this disease that's all over the world, Rowley virus. So if there's Rowley virus in the area, Pinot Noir will always show it first. And then what I read in the history, that Pinot Noir was sort of went through ups and downs due to this susceptibility to Rowley virus. But then in 1973, a winery in Stellenbosch, Murati, that everybody knows is very traditional winery, they bottled the first Pinot Noir. But you know, I'm always looking for a role model or a father that you can look up to. And in my opinion, who's the father of Pinot Noir is Mr. Tim Hamilton Russell, that bought Hemel en Aarde, Hamilton Russell vineyards in the Hemel en Aarde Valley, just up from Hermanus. And the first Pinot Noir was bottled in 1986. And I can today say, in my personal opinion, he can put the hat on as the father. His son, of course, is in charge of the winery today, but his father was very instrumental in making top quality Pinot Noir. So ours grow in Ceres. If you enter the town of Ceres from the bottom, you turn left. I'm not expecting your listeners will know the roads, but up through a small village called Prince Alfred Hamlet, up a steep up the Geidu Pass, and on top you turn left and into this amazing valley called the Witzenberg Valley. And there, Peter Graaf, of course, that's related to the Villiers Graaf, the owner of the Grendel. He planted Chardonnay and Pinot Noir even before I joined the Grendel. And it's amazing, Dan. I hope your listeners or your guys that's tuning in, if you look at this picture, sorry, this is my PowerPoint display of the evening, not very professional, but by coincidence it's lying here on my desk. And this is 2.5 months ago, the Pinot Noir vineyard in Ceres. Just look at the trellising, actually the snow on the wires. So this was planted 13 years ago. And yeah, it's growing there between massive apple orchards and pear orchards, and a vineyard that's very well managed and looked after. And we made the first Pinot Noir in 2012, and each year it's been doing extremely well. And I could actually experience how the vineyards mature and went through puberty and start settling, not just in the soil, but on the trellising. And there's a great balance now between berry size, analysis, picking time. And the fruit is picked there and brought here. The vineyards are growing on 960 meters above sea level, where our highest vineyard here is 290 meters, and that's not without reason that there's snow in some weeks in winter. Of course, it doesn't mean a lot because the plant is dormant, but just the fact to see a picture where it's the soil and the vine itself is covered with snow is amazing. Yeah, and we produce with my assistant here in the cellar. He's the big Pinot Noir guy. He went to Burgundy. He's also an old protege of the guild, and he's instrumental in the vinification of the Pinot Noir. And what are you really looking for in Pinot Noir? For me, it's about purity. There's a lot of Pinot Noirs that have a bit of a off odor or a pong to it. If in my opinion, personal opinion, I'm always looking for purity. I'm looking for red fruit, and I'm looking for a hint of perfume. That is for me the characteristics of Pinot Noir. So we pick the fruit, hand pick, brought it here, bring it here. We crush it and keep it cold for 3-4 days, and then we inoculate it and heat up the juice slightly, and then do a pneumatic punch down 3 times a day. And in some days we do a quick aerated pump over, and then after 7-8 days of fermentation, we press the skins with a basket press and transfer this young wine to barrels where we do malolactic, and then from there racking. Most of the barrels are new for the malolactic, but after the month of malolactic, we will rack it, adjust the balance of the wine, and then transfer it into 2nd, 3rd, and 4th full barrels for the 12 months of maturation. Yeah, this year at Veritas, I was I think there was an entry of about 18 different Pinot Noirs. The only one that received a gold medal, not even a gold, the double gold medal, was our 2019 Pinot Noir. And I must give a lot of credit to Morgan Stein, my assistant, that was instrumental in the vinification of that.
A wonderful story of that journey of Pinot Noir, and I suspect that Sue joins me in feeling just a little bit thirsty and wanting to try some. I'm not sure if you have any with you, but I do, and I will. But I'm going to try some of your wine first, Sue, and I've got your bubbles here. When I was speaking to Francois from Le Lude earlier, he was discussing about the salinity, for want of a better word, that the grapes from Plettenberg Bay allowed him to infuse into the Cap Classique that he was producing. That would seem to be something of a hallmark. What for you defines not just Newstead, but that sense of Cap Classique wine of origin Plettenberg Bay?
I think it's the freshness, but also the depth. You know, I'm more on sort of marketing and creating business rather than a wine fundy, but I really know what I like to drink. And for me, I drink Newstead because it makes me feel like I haven't been drinking. You know, I'm very alcohol sensitive on other wines, but for me, I drink Newstead because of the purity.
And we have two of them here. The first of them, there we go, it's sitting open, is the Newstead Brut. It is 2016. We've also got some rosé as well. Before we try them, I already have, it's lovely, but before we try them formally, the wine that you're making and the process they're in, give us a little bit of the technical side of it, the time on lease and the process that you're going through with creating your bubbles.
Actually, when we started this business, my husband takes the product from vineyard to cellar, and then I take it from bottle onwards. So I've kind of left all the technical to him. But what I do know is that we feel like we found our sweet spot on 52 months on lees. And it's obviously 100% Chardonnay, but now with the 52 months on lees, we're getting a beautiful biscuit brioche, even more to Marmite, which we are thrilled with.
And also just a little bit of added bottle age on this one. So you got that 4 years there a bit. Mine's aged slightly more from there. It's not a huge operation. And so your challenge is always, well, on one hand, we'd like to keep it as long as we can. But on the other hand, you do need to sell this stuff to keep the business turning over. How much of a challenge is that?
We made the decision again on quality over quantity, and we are keeping it for as long as it needs to be kept. So if that's 5 years, 10 years, whatever it takes, we are in. And we are small enough to be able to do that. And with the other add-ons in the business, those have taken off from, you know, people flying in all over the world for weddings at Newstead, and the restaurant is busy. You know, everything else is allowing us to be able to keep that wine on lease for as long as it needs to be.
Bravo. I love hearing that. You also point me in the direction of a question I was going to ask a little later, but I shall bring it forward. You talk about the rest of the world having a look at it. Where is this wine going off to? It's not something you see a huge amount of in South Africa. So is it disappearing to far-flung shores?
It's not really, because we just really don't have enough to keep us, you know, like stocked. And I know when we first produced it, our first lot sold in 3 months, and then the next year it sold in 3 weeks, and then we started to do waitlisted. We're obviously producing a little bit more than our first year of harvest, first few years, but we found that we sell it mostly out of the cellar. So if anyone wants it in far-reaching places, like we've had requests for the US for next year, in a restaurant called Delish Sisters that is opening up. It's also part of the Lund family. We will then allocate that.
Not much. How much is not much? What sort of numbers are you making on an annual basis?
Well, we do 45,000 bottles of sort of between 40 and 45,000 bottles of everything. So I'd say sort of 6,000 to 8,000 bottles of sparkling Chardonnay and 6,000 to 8,000 bottles of the rosé. But that also depends what we are wanting to release. So we're not looking at demand, we're looking at quality again. So we only give what we have available at what we're happy with.
It's a great philosophy to have, and it's one, the appreciation of which will be shared by, we've got a big name watching at the moment, Sue. Angela Lloyd. Love the Newstead Lund bubbles. They get better from an already high starting point every year. It's among other bubblies I'm pouring at a party this weekend. Now, if Angela Lloyd is having a party, expect everybody to end up in the pool with nothing on at 3 a.m. and the police staff to stop it. That's how Angela's parties work. She's that kind of person. But if Angela likes your wine, Sue, you're clearly doing something right.
Well, Angela actually gave us, she gave us a call when we first entered Platters, and she was the taster. And she took the time to give us a call to say that she loved the rosé. And of course, being in Plettenberg Bay, one thing you are is a little bit separated from the rest of the wine world. And not being in the wine world before, we didn't really know who was who. And it was so lovely that she reached out. And we so appreciate that she has supported us right from the beginning. And we so appreciate guidance or anything that the sort of wine connoisseurs can tell us, we would be delighted to know. So thank you, Angela.
She's a proper rock star in the world of wine. So there we go. You've got some other wine. I'll come back to that in a moment. Before we go back to Charles, I see Reginald Peckler from Upper Cheetah Plains is in full cry. The only book I admire a lot, Pinot Noir and the rest. Life is too short to sample a wine with short legs, short life, and short story. Dan, you are busy stealing my heart. Great show indeed. Well, it's all down to the guests and great people watching like yourself, Reggie. So lovely to have you here with us. The Pinot Noir story that you have, Charles, I think I've got 3 vintages. I'm going to try the 17 to start with in just a second. Is this... Charles is keen on doing some Pinot Noir, and it's a fun and exciting diversion, and it's just a cool thing to do, or is it more commercially minded? Is this the idea of creating a really meaningful Durbanville story around Pinot Noir, even if the grapes are coming in from elsewhere?
Yeah. No, Dan, I think Pinot Noir is very much dependent on continental growing conditions. I don't want to sound too technical, but Chardonnay and Pinot Noir is 2 varieties that do very well in continental conditions. So as you know, we are 7 kilometers away from the ocean, and I guess Sue's circumstances there, climate-wise, is also a bit more, I will say, ocean influence or maritime influence with the close proximity to the ocean. But this is very much inland, and 2 hours driving from here. Like mentioned, it's in the Plettenberg Valley, 960 meters above sea level. And from the word go, I realized it's something very special. When they due to the family link, I could put a bid in for the grapes. So I purchased it in 2012. It was literally a ton of free, if I remember correctly. And today we produce about 1,400 cases of 12. Of this, and it's just amazing how the wine performs. So it's part of our range. We have 3 wines that we refer to as wine of origin. On the back label, you will read wine of origin Sierra's Plateau there, and on the front label, it's Op die Berg, on the mountain Pinot Noir, with the fact that it's one of the highest growing vineyards in South Africa. The highest, of course, is Cederberg at 1,150 meters above sea level. This is 960, and it's such a great expression of continental growing conditions. So I'm very happy and I'm still learning a lot about Pinot Noir, and if there's a bit of a success, we are very happy due to that, and we adjust our vinification, and it's a completely different ball game vinifying Pinot Noir versus vinifying, for instance, something like Shiraz. It's a much more oxidative process, the Shiraz, where the Pinot Noir is, you want to preserve all that fine fruit and the bright color of it and not expose it at the wrong time to air and oxygen.
34 years in the industry, and Charles continues to learn. It's wonderful what wine does for us. I know you showed us a photo a little earlier on, Charles, but I've dug up one other that I'll pop up on screen. This is the vineyards in the middle of winter. Hard to believe that is South Africa. Hard to believe that wine survives, because it looks, if I see that, Charles, I'm thinking those grapes are finished, those vines are done. There's no chance those will survive, and yet they're magical creatures, these vines, aren't they?
I know, Dan, wine is a tough plant. It can be very finicky, and specific Pinot Noir can be very finicky, but it's a tough plant. At that stage when you can see the snow, I know a lot of people will say, a lot of friends ask me if I send them that picture, gee, won't the vine die? But it's of course dormant and it's already fast asleep. And then in the second half, in Sierras a bit later, by the second half of September, this amazing process starts taking place of budding. And then a week or two later, you will see the first green shoots. And it's just amazing to experience the seasons, you know. And people ask, maybe it's interesting for your listeners, people ask, what is the definition of a great vintage? And of course, there's many definitions, but I always say, if you have moist in the soil, enough moist, not too much, and you have a good soil, and you can experience the process, what the French call veraison, is where the berries start turning, in the case of Pinot Noir, from blue-green to lighter green, and then start changing into a black color, a dark color, and it will take about a week for the whole process of veraison to take place. If you can have from there till picking 50 days, maybe 60 days in the case of Sierras, with cool, moderate conditions where you don't experience heat waves. And what is the definition of a heat wave? It's 3 hours consecutively following one another with a temperature of higher than 35 degrees. So rarely you will find that in Sierras. So in the last few vintages, we sort of really, I think, is on top of the Pinot Noir. We understand the vinification now, and we work extremely hard to focus on the purity of the fruit, and definitely not overpower it with barrels or with oak. For me, oak is just a tool to open up the wine, to oxidize the wine. I know it's a swear word in wine, but to open up the wine and just make it more subtle and more approachable and more likable. And yeah, that's the story of Pinot Noir at the Grendel.
A story that's fairly young, but is growing with great excitement. Also fairly young is the Newstead story. We've talked a bit about the bubbles. Not the only wine you have. There's some Sauvignon Blanc and some Rosé that arrived by delivery a couple of weeks back from Plettenberg Bay. Tell us a little bit about those two, Sue.
Well, our rosé is obviously Pinot Noir, and it is 15% Chardonnay making up the rest of it. Again, we made a drier rosé. We also decided not to color it with any sort of darker wines. It is very pale, but we just want the honesty from it. And obviously, it's also a surprise and very delightful. And it's very popular with diabetic drinkers. And not that we are certified diabetic, but I think with it, it's sort of bone dry, and yet very easy to drink even without food. But yeah, that's our Pinot Noir rosé. And then we have another still rosé, which is also Pinot Noir, and then 15% Chardonnay.
And then there's also a Sauvignon Blanc. Plettenberg Bay is an ideal place for summer Sauvignon Blanc consumption. Yes. Give us a little on that.
Well, we've produced Sauvignon Blanc and released that obviously a few years earlier than our sparkling wines. And I remember John Platter himself tasting it and saying, this is the wine that is going to put Plettenberg Bay on the map. And right from the get-go, it had a following. And again, it's a little bit different. It's very popular to the sort of warmer climate Sauvignon Blancs. Cooler climate, very popular with our German visitors and English visitors, but especially the German visitors. And our Sauvignon Blanc was scored 91 by Tim Aiken, and I think we've got room to grow with that as well. Yeah.
So lots of acclaim for a wine that is it's making an impact in a short space of time. That impact will continue. Will it continue with other wines? Are there plans to expand and to take the range beyond what it sits at present?
Our plan is to make wines just better and better year on year. And we are not wanting to expand because, even every vineyard gets horse manure and fertilizers. And somebody asked my husband, why do you do that? And he says he needs to go around to every vineyard, every vine. And that's the plan. We sort of know and nurture each vine. So no, we won't expand.
All right, I'm going to come back and chat to you about that, because I remember Duncan Savage telling me, hand on heart, Dan, I'm only ever going to make 2 wines. He's sitting on 14 and counting. So we'll see if your success has the world demanding a little more. The Pinot Noir part of a very wide portfolio for you, Charles, and a really cool addition. In terms of the rest of the wine, give us an update of what's been happening of late elsewhere at de Grendel, and what's exciting you beyond just the Pinot Noir for the next stretch.
Yeah, Dan, no, I must agree 100% with Duncan Savage. He's a good friend of mine. And I think one of our big challenges is, and I take my hat off for Sue and her family, to stay with 4 or 5 products. Even here at the Grendel, we produce around 55,000 cases of wine, and it's also 14 different SKUs, 14 different labels. And it's probably one of the challenges in South Africa. I remember a stat to say the John Platter taste more than 8,000 wines from 529 wineries. And if you do that calculation, you can quickly work out that each winery have on average 14. Funny enough, we keep on referring to 14 labels, but 14 labels. And if you really look strategically to that, it's not a plus for a brand, because in some other way, you dilute your approach to have 14 different labels. So we get away with it at the Grendel because we have 2 very strong labels. That's making up half of our production. It's Sauvignon Blanc and Merlot. And interestingly enough, that's the 2 varieties, not the Grendel, but in South Africa, that's the most consumed, Sauvignon Blanc by a mile. And the second most popular varietal wine in South Africa is Merlot. And if you look at strategically the industry, it's only the 4th and, funny enough, the 8th most planted variety. As you know, it's Chenin, Colombard, Cabernet, Sauvignon Blanc, Shiraz, and then Chardonnay, Pinotage, and then only Merlot is the 8th most planted varieties in South Africa. And yeah, with Rosé and Shiraz, it's making up 86% of our range. And then the rest is smaller productions like the Pinot Noir and our Chardonnay, also from Shiraz, and a new addition, 2 Shirazes. One is called Opieberg Syrah, that's planted on a farm not far from there. And another one is a wine from Elim. I'm originally from Bredasdorp, like mentioned. And I'm very fond of this peppery, garlic, rotundant flavors in Shiraz. That's a bit of a new style. And we had a bit of a seminar a while ago where we discussed different styles of Shiraz, and there's a definite move away from high alcohol wines. Let's say high alcohol Shirazes that have alcohols of 14.8 to 15, even in some cases a bit higher than 15. And there's a swing towards wines that have alcohol Shirazes between 13 and 14. And it brings a complete different set of flavors and aromatics to the wine that make it very interesting. And we have 2 of them, one from Elim and one also from Shiraz, where the Pinot Noir originates from.
The geographical breadth of the de Grendel operation, these different corners of South Africa you're bringing wine from in, will speak to the term you didn't really want to use earlier, which was that global warming. But the fact that all of our winemakers have to be aware of shifting conditions and what that says to both the style of the wine they make and also the grapes that they're using. With that in mind, is that just another good reason to be keeping a firm eye on Plettenberg Bay, do you think, Charles, that it's somewhere that's only going to grow as a wine destination?
No, Dan, just in my time, there's the emergence of the KwaZulu-Natal Highlands, and there's Plettenberg Bay, and then there's smaller regions like Shiraz, Elim, some regions here on the West Coast. So I think there's definitely, I think there's a group of growers or brands that believe in the traditional wine growing regions like Durbanville, Stellenbosch, Paarl, Franschhoek, even sort of the Breë River Valley, Worcester. But then there's another school of another group that believed to be a bit sort of adventurous, taking a chance, and like Sue and her family did, sort of being part of the establishment of Plettenberg Bay, and that's amazing. You know, the more interesting options we can have to put on the table, that more it shows the geographic diversity of South Africa. It's not just a valley that's the same as, if I can say this in respect to the Napa Valley or to even areas in France, that's more or less the same, left, right, north and south. The soil is the same. There's maybe a sort of a slightly steep up, but here we have completely new areas, and it just shows you how diverse we can be and how adventurous winemakers and wineries can be in South Africa.
Your words are getting some backing from another great authority, Josephine Prieur, joining us all the way from France on the show. Hello, Dan. Completely agree with Charles. The most important is to pick up the right time. The Pinot Noir, and it's not the barrel that makes the wine. The barrel's there to sublimate the Pinot Noir, as the foot of the glass of wine is important. In Meursault, we said that we need to suffer in winter to make some good Pinot Noir, nice snow in the vineyards. Thank you, Josephine. It was lovely hearing from you with some great analysis from somebody who knows her wine particularly well. The Durbanville area has got a very well-established wine route. It's got a very established wine tourism business. If we look at Plettenberg Bay, Sue, I know that you've got your honeymoon suites, which my wife rather likes the look of, hopefully with me as well. You've got the rest.
Welcoming you.
Is there now a bit of a wine route developing? Is there a sense of wine tourism is gaining a bit of a foothold in Plettenberg Bay?
There absolutely is, and it's in its infancy. So it will take a little bit of time for it all to be a little bit more cohesive, in that people are planting more grapes down our road, and you can already visit sort of 2 or 3 wine farms in a radius of, you know, like 3 or 4 k's, and it is growing. We already have the locals and the international visitors that come to Plettenberg Bay for summer holidays. And that has been a great help to all our vineyards, because everybody sells out, obviously, after that, or hopefully that's the plan. So Plettenberg Bay as a destination is, you know, attracts people from worldwide, not only wine connoisseurs, but also people looking for different things to do while they're enjoying wine.
There's been quite a long stretch, Sue, where you've been described as South Africa's great hidden secret. I don't think that really applies much more, because you're not so hidden and you're not so much of a secret, because you keep winning prizes and getting acclaim and getting people like Angela Lloyd singing your praises. And so you're now well into the establishment, and clearly you and Doug have put a huge amount of work in. But before letting you go, it would be wrong not to just ask you about Anton Small and the work that he's put in helping to develop this Newstead Lund brand.
Well, I think Anton and Doug get on very well, and Doug's part of the story is to actually bring in the best grapes that he can possibly grow, and then he actually allows Anton to take the lead. And although he is in the cellar with him, Anton has the freedom to make good wine, you know, and we obviously facilitate that with getting what he needs. But he also has time to go for a surf when the surf's up. So I think he's living the ideal lifestyle. And basically the cellar is his space. And I see he's there more and more. And he's pops in and out of the restaurant. So, you know, Anton is the expert, and we're allowing him to take the lead there. Yeah.
And it would appear passion is fairly contagious when it comes to this particular operation. Last word from you back in Durbanville, Charles, as we wrap up. And I mentioned at the very start of the show that you're not the only member of your family I've interviewed of late. We had Marcelle, your daughter, on the show, on the Dan Nichols show a few weeks back. She is, of course, the host of Boerskefrou on CakeNet. Is this her just treading water a little until she falls back into line with the family and begins her true calling as the next generation of Hopkins winemakers?
No, Dan, definitely not. Just before we say goodbye, Sue, and I say this from the bottom of my heart, I consider that road running from the N2, running from Swellendam all the way to Plet. I think that's probably one of the most, for me personally, one of the most beautiful drives in South Africa. It's just amazing to experience the ocean on the one side, mountains on the other side, and it's so lush and green. It's really past George and past Wilderness and nice now, then to Plet. It's absolutely a stunning drive. No, I can assure you, Dan, it's highly unlikely that she will be a winemaker one day. I think if I ask her that, she will only laugh. And I think she will be very fond of. We also produce a Cup Classique, and of course, she do drink some of it. She's getting married in April next year, and I'm stocking up on the wines, but I think she will love Sue's Cup Classique. And she do drink a bit of red wine. She was doing a bit of modeling work in New York, and there somebody introduced her to red wine, and she loved that. And of course, very specific. And it's fascinating that she doesn't know a lot about wine, but one thing she knows, and I think that we can summarize and say most wine drinkers and people that don't have the technical or the inside knowledge of wine can quickly tell you, put a wine in two categories. You can talk for hours about the color and the chemical composition and the accolades and the shifting pHs, and they will taste and nod and say, I agree. And then they taste it, and suddenly, down in their subconscious mind, they put the wine in two categories. Very simple. I like it or I don't. As simple as that. So she's very much in that category. Very quickly, she will say, this is not for me, Dad. Do you have another bottle or something else? And then I will, of course, if I have some wine, and most of the times I do, we'll open another bottle, but always the category, I like it or not. And that's so important. I think sometimes winemakers miss the, flush customers with a lot of technical info. And at the end of the day, we must just sit down and listen what they say. I like this or I don't. As simple as that.
It is the great way of determining wine. Wine I like, wine I don't. One is good, one is bad for the individual. What I like, you might not, and vice versa. But that is the beauty of the world of wine. And that is our show for this week as we celebrate wine out of Plettenberg Bay, which is gaining an ever stronger foothold, thanks in no small part to the Lund family and their vision of saying goodbye to KwaZulu-Natal and moving south to Plettenberg Bay, and to Charles Hopkins, who I first spent time with over a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc at 7 o'clock in the morning, and who's now making Pinot Noir to add to the vast swathe of wine he's made across South Africa for the last 34 years. Sue, Charles, thank you both so much for joining the show this evening. Thanks for some lovely, lovely wine. And I look forward to one of you sending me a photo once Charles arrives in Plettenberg Bay for that tasting and that road trip he's promised to make.
We'll have to get you there too, Dad.
Yeah.
With
and of
great...
course, Sue, if you're ever in Cape Town, please pop in here and come and have a bite and a glass of wine. Bring your husband. It will be great.
Thank you. We'd be delighted. We have so much to learn.
Me too. Thank you very much.
Charles, Sue, thank you both so much. Lovely having them on. Is there a more exciting industry in South Africa than wine? And for all the madness and idiot English prime ministers banning travel and Europe going crazy and America telling us to stay away, lots of reasons to feel depressed. And then you open up a great bottle of Pinot Noir, you open up a cracking bottle of Bubbles, and you're reminded of all that is good about South Africa. And both Sue and Charles very much a part of exactly that narrative. And that narrative extends to the incredible group of winemakers who have donated wine so generously. Charles is amongst them. We have a bottle of the De Villiers Graaf as part of our auction with Strauss on Thursday in support of the Reach for a Dream Foundation. There are still a last few tickets available at Web Tickets to come and join us and bid on everything from a barrel of Erica Obermeyer wine to 50 bottles of Cup Classique, wine from Ibn Sadi, wine from the Mullineaux, a 3-litre bottle of 99 Meerlust Rubicon. There's so much that is up for grabs. And we'd love to have you come along if you're in Joburg, bid on it, and help send money the way of the Reach for a Dream Foundation. But if you can't make it, you can join us online via the Strauss website on Thursday evening and help contribute to a very good cause just before Christmas. That does it for now. Thursday, I'll be with Higo Jacobs. We'll be looking back at the wine year and celebrating the wine that is up for grabs at the auction on Thursday. And then next week is our last week of live shows for the year. We'll be speaking to loads of top sommeliers and wine writers and getting their picks of 2021. And who knows, maybe there'll be a little Newstead or a Grendel popping up in those selections. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being part of the show. Big, big thank you to Sue and to Charles. We'll see you live on Thursday. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.